Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson and welcome to Construction Management Tips. Today we're going to be talking about change. How change is changing the construction industry, what's going on, and what can you do to help lead the change and also ensure that it doesn't leave you behind. So we got some interesting things we're going to talk about. When we think about innovative and creative thinking, we don't often think about the construction industry as far as the management processes. We can think about things with regards to materials and equipment, but as far as management goes, we don't often think in those ways. And even when it comes to materials and different ways of doing things, we're pretty cautious about that. And you might think, well, why is that? Well, it's because mistakes can be very costly. So if you have something that's kind of tried and true, you're kind of reluctant to try something different in case it doesn't work and it's pretty expensive to fix, right? So it takes also a lot of time and effort to master something new or to purchase a piece of equipment. I was talking to somebody recently and they were talking about how smaller contractors have gotten themselves into a bit of disadvantage because sometimes new layout equipment, scanning equipment can be quite expensive, quite an expensive investment up front, but it saves so much overall. And so then some of these smaller businesses, they're a little bit reluctant to put that initial investment, but that's putting them at a competitive disadvantage against companies that actually decided to invest in those particular products. The other thing is we're project based, and so we come together and then do the project and we go apart. So it's not like manufacturing where we've got this group that we're constantly working together and we can improve as a group and a team as well. So that has an impact. What we do know though is that innovative and creative companies, they last the longest. They sustain themselves for long periods of time. And that, I could go through the list of history. Companies like Kodak, they lasted a long time, but then they made a critical error at a certain junction, and there was a transition from their technology to another technology. Blockbuster to Netflix, another example. But we can also look at construction companies too. As I was mentioning, if you don't adjust, you don't pivot, you don't advance yourself, you're left behind. And we also know that innovative and creative people and teams do very well over the long term. You can look around and people that haven't really adjusted or learned new things, they become very vulnerable in their work positions. It's kind of like we want to package them out or we want them to retire and get out of the way for the changes that are occurring, and they're very resistant. So that causes problems. And we have, the construction industry, if you look at the average age of a tradesperson, it's upwards of 55 years and up when we start talking about that. So we know there's going to be a number of retirements in the next 10 years. And while that's true that they haven't changed, we're also going to lose a wealth of experience too. Much better if we have some of those experienced tradespersons having a different view on things and being amenable to change and actually embracing it. But really, I want to talk about, you in the construction industry and what's kind of going on, and it's kind of the mindset that you need to have. Because the construction industry has not been exactly productive in, actually hasn't improved productivity. I've got this chart recently. I usually use this other one that's from 1995, but I came across this one in the Economist. The Economist magazine, excellent magazine for these kind of data circles, and they had an article on this, on learning by doing. And they were showing the statistics of the construction industry as far as gross value added. And this is United States, but you know what? In the Western world, I don't think the data is any different, and I doubt it's much different no matter where you look. So construction has been a laggard as far as improvements in productivity, improvements in what you're able to do over the last 60 plus years, 70 plus years, right? 75, I guess. So you look at that, we really haven't improved. If anything, we've kind of gone down. And that's partly to do with the levels of complexity and technological improvements we've been making in the actual products, which makes it even harder to actually coordinate, plan, schedule, and project manage these projects. Manufacturing, of course, has done quite well. I didn't really realize that agriculture had done, amazingly well over that time period. So, that's why there's a lot fewer jobs in agriculture than there was in 1947 today, comparatively. Manufacturing has made dramatic improvements, and construction, like I said, not too good overall. There's other laggards, like healthcare and things like that, that also have had their fair share of issues. But construction has not been leading the way, shall we say, in innovation, creative thinking. Otherwise, we would be actually improving more dramatically, especially when we're talking about managing the projects. And that's a big part of managing productivity. So when we think about innovative and creative thinking, there's other barriers, where we have a lot of inflexible policies and procedures that make it difficult for us to innovate, and part of that is to do with risk. I think construction companies are concerned about risk because it's such an expensive process. I think some construction companies understand that, and they're very careful about their policies and procedures, that they're not hampering risk. When you have bureaucracies and there's so many levels, it really does slow down your ability to innovate and be creative. And actually, it disengages people from that process. And so that can be really like a fatal blow to individuals, because now you're disengaged and you're not being that creative, innovative, you're not learning that much new stuff, you're falling behind, and that really stifles individuals, but it stifles teams and it stifles companies. So yeah, we're concerned about risk in the construction industry, but we're also concerned about innovation in the construction industry. And in the middle, there is this sweet spot, just the right amount that we are going to have. Yes, we do need to have policies and procedures for a variety of reasons. We don't want people doing certain things that they shouldn't be doing. But at the same time, we don't want to make it so onerous that people just decide they're not going to try different things. Well, I'm going to stick with the status quo because it's easier. I don't have to jump over all these hoops to get an approval. And we also have this problem in our regulatory authorities in construction too, and rightfully so. Regulatory authorities are concerned about things, but we start getting into areas like building science and climate change and advancing air tightness in houses and healthy indoor air quality and things like that. Well, we have to try new and different things to see that they work. And we have to have codes that are adaptive, that once something's been tested, it's more easy to get it included into the code if we've got the right approvals process without it being so onerous that it limits the amount of people trying different things. And then we don't really make the radical improvements that are needed like other industries are doing. So there is definitely this sweet spot, as I call it. And again, some companies will they'll be more bureaucratic and protective, and then they tend to fall behind and become laggards in the innovation side. And as I started out this PM Tips, that puts that company in a vulnerable spot because others are surpassing them. Their productivity is improving. They're doing better products. They're more reliable. They have better retention of their clients. They have better retention of their staff. And in a limited resource market, those are things that would really limit those companies' ability to be successful. So some fuel for thought, literally and figuratively, if you will. I did a review on my Books That Make You Better video list by Adam Grant. It's called Originals, and it's really about innovation and how some companies are more innovative, some individuals are more innovative, and what are some of the reasons. So it's an excellent book. The lesson here isn't to ask customers what they want, as the famous line often attributed to Henry Ford goes, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Because at that time, nobody knew about a car, right? So that means identifying a potential need. And so instead, creators ought to build a car and see if customers will drive it. That means identifying a potential need, designing what the lean startup author Eric Ries calls minimal viable product. In construction, we could think about this as prototyping something, as testing something out, as trying something, measuring it, and then comparing that to what our regular practice is, and then looking at that also as far as how could we make improvements to that. And that actually ties to lean construction methodology, which talks about first run studies and trying something and seeing how it works, trying a different path to something, learning from that, plan, do, study, adjust, and iterating and making those improvements. And having that kind of mindset is important. So really, you think about that. That's the reasoning I would use on a construction project. How can we prototype this? Let's try this on this particular project. You're a larger company. Let's try this on this particular project. You're a small company. We've got this project coming up. I want to try this, and we'll compare and we'll see how we did. And we'll see whether this is going to be viable enough for us to iterate it and continue improving it so that we get away from this traditional way that takes a lot of time. This ties to another excellent book that I've talked about again in my Books That Makes You Better video list, and that's continuous improvement, growth versus fixed mindset. You're not going to do this kind of stuff innovating if you've got a fixed mindset. If your business and culture has a fixed mindset, it's going to be difficult. You've got to have a growth mindset. We're not creative yet. We're not that innovative yet. That's fine. But to say you're not creative or to say you're not innovative, that's not fine. That's saying you've got a fixed mindset. How are we going to change this? How are we going to improve in this, right? And so those are the main things that we have to think about in learning new things and trying new things and not being stuck in your ways, right? So as I said, I would also challenge that many businesses operate with a fixed mindset to their detriment and demise because they're not learning. They're not a learning organization. They're not a change or innovating organization. So Dweck had a lot of good points in this book. And if you've got kids too, think about that too. If they've got an idea that they're not good at something, that's not what you want to instill. They're not good at something yet, but with practice, with study, you can get better. And very important concept that really I feel fits into that creative and innovation mindset. So I had a little bit of fun when I was thinking about putting this together, and I kind of thought about this over the years in some way. I always watch, there's Alistair Sim's Scrooge at Christmas time, so it's kind of a family ritual that we watch that, and that's, of course, Dicken's Christmas Carol. And Fezziwig is a not a main character, it's actually a side character in the actual show. Fezziwig is basically this jovial person, very confident, and somebody that you would like to work for. He's somebody that you would definitely like to work for. Has the right disposition, wants his employees to have a good time, and has a very good business. Now, Jacob Marley and Ebenezer Scrooge, they work for Fezziwig when they're younger, and they love working with Fezziwig, and at that time they weren't the miserable people that they became. So he really strives, Fezziwig does, to bring happiness to others. And Dickens used Fezziwig to represent a set of communal values and a way of life. And it was during the Industrial Revolution where change was happening very quickly. But you know what? Change is happening even faster now. So this is why this video on, construction and change, and where this fits in, I believe, right? And it was a way of life which was quickly being swept away in the economic turmoil of the early 19th century. We've got mechanization, industrial revolution, textile, people being thrown out of work, working in factories, not very good working conditions, no labor unions to speak of, very little regard for safety, all of these things kind of going on. Anyways, Fezziwig was more into the traditional values. So they got this quote, they took this quote from Dickens' Christmas Carol, and it's not just for money alone that one spends a lifetime building up a business. It's to preserve a way of life that one knew and loved. No, I can't see my way to selling out to the new vested interests, Mr. Jorgen. I'll have to be loyal to the old ways and die out with them if needs must. And so this is Fezziwig talking, kind of still in the heyday, discussing, the changes that are happening, but how as a business owner, he's going to stick with the tried and true, preserve that way of life. Unfortunately, well, really, I think fortunately in this case, that's why I call it Fezziwig Failure to Change syndrome, something I just kind of made up. But Fezziwig Failure to Change syndrome, later on, it shows him sitting in his carriage, horse carriage, and they're taking down his sign. He's out of business now, likely went bankrupt. And Scrooge and Jacob Marley are coming in, and their signs are going to be going up. And there, you could see Fezziwig was heartbroken, and even Scrooge had a little bit, before he'd really toughened, had a little bit of sorrow in his eye for Fezziwig. My point with this is, I believe Fezziwig, if he changed with the times, he had a good business, he had the right attitude. When we talk about lean construction methods and change, and that's a big part of the change that I see happening in construction, is lean construction, which is adding value, reducing and eliminating waste, and respect for people. Respect for people's a big center item. Fezziwig definitely had the respect for people down, but he didn't adopt and adapt to the changes that were taking place. So that was a failure, unfortunately, on his part. And you know what? It was a failure for the people that worked for Fezziwig. So don't end up being like Fezziwig, where you're stuck in your ways. Be adaptive, have respect for people, and understand that change is happening all around us. And let's embrace it, and let's look at the opportunities for innovation. And if you've watched my videos before, I use this mind map to kind of explain, the different stages in construction, the site team, leadership, relationships, ethics that have to pour in to make things successful. But then there's all the management steps and processes that we have to do. If you look at these, and this is just a small indicator of the overall mind map of construction, there are huge opportunities for innovation in this business. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to look at how can we make improvements in this industry? How can we improve the lives of communities and people everywhere? Because that's what we do. We build bridges literally and figuratively for the population. We do everything from bridges to water treatment, sewage treatment plants, to homes and hospitals, to factories, to warehouses, to shopping stores. Nothing gets done without construction. And we really have to ensure our livelihoods by being innovative and creative so that we can produce these products that people enjoy, that makes our communities and societies run at an economical price. And that's one of the reasons why we have to make these improvements. So conclusion, don't be resistant to change. Embrace change. Reframe it. If you're stuck that this is something that you don't want to do, reframe it on the positive side, that it's a positive journey of learning and adjustment. That's what happens. Sometimes we get negative thoughts in mind. We have to reframe it into a positive way. What's a positive outcome from this? I've said it before, I had a few years before COVID that I was asked to teach an online course with videos and different things. And the first thing that jumped in my mind, this is going to be a lot of work. But I reframed it very quickly, and I learned how to use the software, and I'm here right now talking with you because I kind of reframed that. So when COVID hit, it was a very easy adjustment for me, and it was an opportunity to do things like this and scale our communities the way I've been trying to do. So reframe it. It's a great tool. Use it as an opportunity to grow. Embrace new technologies as they advance. And I'm talking about building information modeling, because that's really going to change the way we do things. It has changed the way we do things, but I think there's so much more to BIM that we don't even know yet what it's going to do. So many more opportunities. And as far as management goes, it's huge opportunities. And lean construction, I believe, is a big tool that will help integrate that change process in management of construction projects, adding value, removing waste, improving flow, improving reliability, predictability on our construction projects, and respect for people, a very important element in there. So be creative, be innovative, and don't settle. So that's my PM tips for this week. If you enjoyed this video, please click the subscribe button. I've got lots of other videos on my playlist, and let's build this construction community together. Please add comments. If you've got examples of change that have taken place, put a comment right below and click on the notifications so you know when new videos come up. I'm Tom Stephenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and change and innovate. We'll see you next time.